prospect of India acquiring the F-35 Lightning II, which is a fifth-generation stealth fighter jet, has sparked considerable debate. Donald Trump made this offer verbally while meeting with Prime Minister Modi in the White House last week. While the F-35 is touted as a game-changer in air dominance, a closer examination reveals that India may not be ready for the world's deadliest platform. Several factors: infrastructure limitations, interoperability challenges, and then of course the price tag. All of this means that India needs to address critical gaps before it can effectively integrate the F-35 into its air force. One of the primary challenges is the integration of F-35 into India's existing air force structure, which is heavily reliant on Russian-made jets. The IAF possesses infrastructure which is tailored for the Sukhois and the MiG fighters, and incorporating the F-35 would mean significant changes in logistics, maintenance, and support systems. The F-35 systems pose major integration hurdles as the IAF currently uses a mix of Russian fighters as well as French fighters, and then of course there are locally made aircraft, all of which are incompatible with American systems. The F-35 demands specialized training and expertise. The F-35 pilots must learn NATO standard operations and complex data systems from scratch. The training requirements and the costs for the F-35 are steep, and India would need to invest heavily in training its pilots, its ground crews, to handle the aircraft's advanced systems. Maintenance and servicing is another significant hurdle. The F-35 requires sophisticated maintenance ecosystem and a new supply chain that is aligned with American standards. The cost of maintenance, pilot training, and spare parts for the F-35 can be exorbitantly high. A significant portion, in fact, of the US Air Force's F-35 fleet is often unfit to fly at any given point of time. Moreover, the extensive logistics footprint that is required for the F-35's deployment does also pose a challenge. The amount of equipment and supplies needed to maintain the F-35 ecosystem can strain resources and also extend deployment times, and that could potentially hinder operational effectiveness. The F-35 is among the most expensive fighter jets ever built. Each jet costs anywhere between $80 million and over $100 million. The overall cost of owning an F-35 extends well beyond the initial purchase price. It encompasses maintenance, training, and spare parts. And given India's need to modernize its defense forces while at the same time also take care of its vast population and having a limited defense budget, investing in the F-35 fleet may not be financially viable. Currently, the Indian Air Force operates a mix of Russian, French, and Indian-made fighter jets. It includes the Sukhoi 30 MKIs from Russia, the Rafale and the Mirage 2000 from France, and of course the indigenous Tejas light combat aircraft, which is in various stages of development. India is also trying to develop its own fifth-generation fighter jet, the AMCA. Now, while these jets are all highly capable, they lack the stealth technology and the advanced sensor systems which set the F-35 apart. However, this possible deal which Trump has offered brings up some important questions. One major concern is how India would retrofit the F-35 into its air force, which mainly operates with Russian and French jets. The IAF has infrastructure designed for the Sukhois and the MiGs, so adding the F-35 would require major changes in logistics, maintenance, and support. India's ongoing purchase of Rafale jets from France and its own efforts to develop its own fighter jets like the AMCA, the Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft, make the decision to onboard the F-35s even more complex. The big question is whether New Delhi is ready to adapt to a completely new aircraft system. India's strategic priorities and threat perceptions also influence whether the F-35 is suitable for India. Some experts believe that instead of buying the F-35 or settling even for the fifth-generation Russian fighter, the Sukhoi 57, acquiring more combat-ready and combat-proven French Rafales would be a wiser decision. The 36 Rafales for the Army have already been delivered, and now the Navy is expected to announce the purchase of the Rafale Ms, which is the maritime version of the fighter jet. A critical challenge is the presence of Russian S-400 air defense systems in India. The US is strongly opposed to any country that operates both the F-35 and the S-400, because the radars of the S-400 can potentially track and compromise the stealth nature of the F-35. In fact, earlier there was an example where the US had stopped an F-35 sale to Turkey after it purchased the S-400 defense systems from Russia. India will also have to likely contend with that same problem. This deal also has geopolitical effects. India has always maintained its strategic autonomy, carefully balancing its relationship between Washington and Moscow. For decades, Russia has been India's main weapon supplier. Even today, more than 50% of India's armaments come from Russia. Buying the F-35s could sour ties between Delhi and Moscow. Russia is already providing the S-400 air defense system, which has raised concerns in Washington. In fact, the previous US administration and also in Trump 1.0, there was the warning of sanctions against India using CAATSA, which is countering America's adversaries through Sanctions Act. If India decides to buy the F-35, it might have to rethink its dependence on Russian air defense. It's also because the US could impose sanctions, or India could make difficulties in making American and Russian defense systems working together smoothly. That's not the only geopolitical or strategic angle. There's also China and Pakistan, both of whom will be closely monitoring if India were to buy the F-35. China has been rapidly upgrading its air force with its J-20 stealth fighters. It even recently unveiled its sixth-generation fighter, the J-36. If India acquires the F-35, Beijing may see this as a direct challenge to its air superiority. Pakistan, which is India's longtime rival, also depends on a mix of Chinese and American jets, including the F-16s. If India gets the F-35, then Pakistan might respond by strengthening its partnership with China. It could even acquire more advanced Chinese J-31 stealth fighters to maintain balance. The United States offering to sell the F-35 stealth jets to India might not be about just boosting the Indian Air Force. It could also be a strategic move to reduce India's long-standing defense relationship with Russia. With the intended deployment target not explicitly mentioned, the context of India's strategic concerns will be a focus on potentially the worst-case scenario, which is a two-front war involving both China in the north and Pakistan to the west. The F-35 stealth capabilities would be particularly valuable in penetrating hostile air defenses vis-à-vis China. While the F-35 offers advanced capabilities, India faces significant hurdles in integrating the F-35 into its existing fleet. Addressing these challenges requires substantial investments, whether it is in infrastructure, training, or in logistics. India must carefully consider the strategic and financial implications of acquiring the F-35. The world is paying close attention to the future course of this deal, from Washington to Moscow to Beijing. Delhi will have to tread very carefully.